Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about the Lightning single target raid build for 10.1 and Aberrus the Shadowed Crucible. This build is very different from the fire builds we're used to seeing in 10.0, so make sure you're giving yourself enough time to practice this so you can really lock in that muscle memory. This build can seem kind of difficult, especially on paper, so we are going to try to keep it as simple as possible and really stick to the fundamentals. Also, this build will be different depending on if you have the 2-piece, and then also again when you get the 4-piece, some slight variations to the opening. So if you want to skip to whatever's relevant to you, I will have chapters in the description so you can just kind of skip around to whatever's most relevant to you. But that being said, if you're like really lost with this build and you just have no idea like really where to start, I would definitely suggest going over the openers, but I'm going to have an essentials chapter as well where you can just focus in on what's most important to get like 80% of the way there and not worry about too much of the minutia. So kind of like an easy mode, if you will. Feel free to skip directly to that if you just want to hear the specific breakdowns. It'll be towards the end of the video. So other than that, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into the talents, and we'll go ahead and start with that next. All right, so starting off with the class side of the tree, basically the only things that are going to be required are going to be your Fire and Ice, your Frost Shock, and your Nature's Fury. Everything else you can basically move around to whatever you need to fit the whatever encounter that you're going into. There's a couple things I would always suggest you take. For instance, your Astral Shift, which is pretty much our only defensive, as well as Plains Traveler to reduce that cooldown. Definitely want to be taking things like Spirit Walker Grace and Graceful Spirit, Ancestral Guidance for that extra healing. Nature's Swiftness is going to be really good for Elemental Blast. Stuff like that, you know, Ancestral Defense, just getting a little bit more defensive there, as well as Nature's Guardian. Those things are like really good pickups, but the only thing that are super necessary are those 3 talents from a damage perspective. So again, if you want to mix and match and customize things specifically for the encounter, absolutely go ahead and do that. This is just basically kind of like a standard setup, I would say, just so I don't have to think about it too much. So that's pretty much it for the class side of the tree. Moving over to the spec tree, we have the lightning build itself, and we're going to be picking up everything that can buff up our lightning bolts. We're going to be coming down here and picking up Stormkeeper, which will also trigger the 4-piece once we get that, so that's one more way that we can get access to our 4-piece. We're going to be taking Ice Fury as well as Electrified Shocks, which will be putting on a debuff onto the target, which increases its damage taken from nature spells. So not only will that buff up all of our lightning bolts, it will also buff our Elemental Blast as well, because it's elemental damage, so it benefits from nature damage as well. We're going to be, like I said, picking up Elemental Blast. We'll be coming down here and picking up a Lightning Rod, which will give us another 20% damage bonus to our Lightning Bolts as well. So another 20%, which will be up basically all the time in single target. Coming down the middle, we'll be picking up Swelling Maelstrom, which will be very important, which will allow us to pool our Maelstrom, which will be important once we get into how this build actually plays. We'll be coming straight down the middle here and grabbing Mountains Will Fall, allowing our Elemental Blast to also overload, just making Mastery an actually good stat for our Elemental Blast as well, and also getting more damage out of those Elemental Blasts, so just even more damage from that. We're going to be coming over to the right side here, grabbing our Surge of Power, and for this, we're only ever going to really be worrying about what it does for a Lightning Bolt, and in this situation, it will be guaranteeing 2 additional Elemental Overloads, which basically is what is our Mastery, which will just be even more damage from our Lightning Bolts. Coming down, we'll be picking up Master the Elements, which will allow us to buff our Elemental Blast with Master the Elements, so an extra 20% damage on that anytime that we cast Lava Burst right before it. And then finally, we're going to come down here and pick up Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. And I know that might seem like a little bit weird for something that's considered a lightning build. All of a sudden, we come down here and pick up Magma Chamber and Windspeakers. But basically, this is the only way that we're going to have access to a Lava Surge. This is what's feeding us that, because as you can see here, we're not taking it naturally, so we're never getting those procs. And basically, what we're going to be doing is every time following an Elemental Blast, we're going to be getting one of these procs, and we're going to be holding this proc until the next time we're able to cast Elemental Blast. So we're basically picking up this one talent, all for being able to moat buff our Elemental Blasts. So as we get into it, it'll make a little bit more sense. On paper, this might seem a little bit weird for some of you, but we'll get into it now. And what we're going to do first, as I said, I'll have it in the chapters down below. We'll start off with how this plays without any tier whatsoever. Then I'll talk about it with the 2-piece, and then I'll talk about it lastly with the 4-piece. Unfortunately, with the 4-piece, I don't have any good footage of it. The PTR servers seem to be down permanently now, so I either wait to put out this video once I get 4-piece, or I can just kind of talk about how it works. So we'll get into that. Feel free to skip to the chapter that's more relevant to you at the moment for whenever you're watching this. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and jump right into that. And if you're interested in just kind of skipping ahead to the essentials, feel free to go ahead and skip to that as well. But for right now, we'll go ahead and talk about this with none of the tier, just completely natural, and go from there. All right, so jumping in with none of the new tiers. So this applies if you have gear from Vault of the Incarnates and you're just starting out in this raid, or if you're a completely fresh character starting in 10.1, we can start here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go through the entire rotation of the opener step by step. So I've got this, this is Heroic Kazara from Tuesday of the raid release. So we're just going to break it down every single cast, and it will be this way every single time you do this. And I'll kind of explain why I'm doing what I'm doing as we do it with a lot of pauses in between. So what we're going to be doing is at pre-pull, about like 3 seconds before the pull, we're going to cast our Storm Elemental. We got that out. And then on pull, we're going to be casting our Ice Fury. So we'll be going into Ice Fury before the pull and immediately following up with a Flame Shock. So we got Flame Shock on the target. The next thing we're going to be doing is Frost Shock. Now, at this point, we're going to start pooling some Maelstrom by spam casting Lightning Bolts. And we want to be aiming for like 90 to 100 Maelstrom. And there's a specific number you're supposed to get to, but to keep it simple and to not put too much into your head, just somewhere between 90 and 100 is fine. Hey guys, it's me from the future. I wasn't going to explain my rationale behind the 90 to 100 Maelstrom at first, but then I realized that there are going to be some people who'd be like, you don't really need that much Maelstrom, and that's true. On pull, you only actually need 76 Maelstrom before you go into the back-to-back combos, and during normal combat, you only need 49 Maelstrom before you go into a combo, or 63 Maelstrom if you already have Frost Shock debuff on the target, and it's going to last for at least 5 seconds, but that's too many numbers, right? If you aim for 90 to 100, I find that for 2 reasons, it'll make it a lot easier. Number 1 is you will always make sure that you have enough Maelstrom by a lot. You'll completely cover it and you'll never make a mistake on the combo if you're pooling enough Maelstrom. Another reason that I say to overshoot it by so much is because if you're aiming for very specific numbers, one of the things I find, especially when you're learning this build, that you will sometimes accidentally undercut how much Maelstrom you need. But if you aim for a Maelstrom number that's much further ahead, if you're aiming for that 90 to 100, as soon as you see 90 to 100 range, you will never make that mistake of accidentally undercutting it. So that's my logic behind aiming for a Maelstrom count that is, in all fairness, way above what actually needs to be done. But from a learning perspective, I do find it to be so much easier if you just aim higher. So that's why I'm doing that. So anyway, back to the video. So we're going to spam out some lightning bolts here. We've got 1, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4, and now we're going to Stormkeeper. So I got to 95 here, which is plenty of Maelstrom for what we need. Then we're going to cast Stormkeeper first, just to go ahead and get that cast. And then we're going to follow it up with what I call the combo. So we're going to be doing this combo a lot in this build. So what we're going to be doing is Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. That is the combo. We're going to be doing the combo a lot. So here we go. We're going to go into the first combo, and we're going to do that twice in a row, essentially. So I've got Stormkeeper cast. I'm going to Frost Shock, like I said. I'm going to Lava Burst, and this will be the only hard cast Lava Burst you should have to do because of Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. Every other Lava Burst is going to be instant cast. This will be the only hard cast one. So we had that Frost Shock into a Lava Burst, into an Elemental Blast, into a Lightning Bolt. And so that first Lightning Bolt is getting the benefit of Surge of Power, Electrified Shocks, and Lightning Rod all at once. So these Lightning Bolt casts with Stormkeeper are going to be extra, extra powerful. So that's one round of the combo, and now we do the exact same thing again. We're going to go Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Bolt. And that's a second round of combos. So we do 2 combos back to back. Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. Every single time. And from here, now that we're done with the Stormkeeper window, we're going to be pooling up our Maelstrom. If you can spread out the Frost Shock as best you can so you have a long enough debuff time coverage. But I'm going to give you a secret. When you're learning this for the first time, do not worry about maximizing your Electrified Shock uptime. You're going to end up hating yourself, and you're going to just feel like you're failing all the time. Don't worry about it so much. Pay attention to the combo. If you can do the combo, always do the combo. So again, here I'm going to start going into spamming Lightning Bolts. I have my Flame Shock falling off, so I'll go ahead and re-up my Flame Shock here. I'm going to use that last Frost Shock into a Lava Burst, and now into an elemental blast. So I do that combo again, and then following it up with a lightning bolt. So again, another one of those combos. Here I'm going to start spamming out those lightning bolts because I have nothing. I don't have my Ice Fury yet. I do have the Lava Burst charge, but I don't have that Ice Fury. I'm going to have to wait a second here because I kind of got rid of those Frost Shock casts a little bit quickly. So I'm going to do a couple lightning bolts, just kind of pool my Maelstrom, and now I'm going to use my Lava Burst into my Elemental Blast because I just don't have Ice Fury yet. And that will happen sometimes. Sometimes you don't have Ice Fury. So I also have a mechanic on me here, but we will talk about that in a little bit. So that's basically the way that the opener works. And we will get more into how it plays outside of the opener a little bit later, because it doesn't have to be just with or without tier. It works the same across the board. So we'll pick up from this a little bit later, but now we're going to go ahead and skip over to once you get the 2-piece set. All right, so now that we have the 2-piece, the opener does vary slightly. Just one note for this clip, it's the best clip that I could find. Unfortunately, a lot of my VODs on Twitch had expired, and I did not prep for this very appropriately. But my Storm Elemental is on cooldown. Typically, you want to make sure that your Storm Elemental is cast about 3 seconds before the pull, and then use your Ice Fury on the pull. So just pretend that I've already cast my Storm Elemental, and we're going into Ice Fury. So we're going to go Ice Fury into Flame Shock, into Frost Shock, and then from here you'll notice that my 2-piece has procced. Now I can't use my Lightning Bolt without using that 2-piece. So we want to make sure that this is buffed as possible. So we've already got the Frost Shock on the target. So now what we're going to do is use our Lava Burst to get Master of the Elements. And now we're going to cast that Lightning Bolt. This will be the only time when you're playing with 2-piece that you do this version of buffing Lightning Bolt with Master of the Elements. From now on, we're going to be using the combo. And the combo is, if you did not watch the previous section, it's going to be Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. Ingrain that in your head. Right here, we can't do that yet because of the fact that we just used that Lava Burst on that previous Lightning Bolt. So for this one time only, we're not going to be buffing Elemental Blast with the Lava Burst. So here I'm going to get a little bit more Maelstrom so I can make sure I can do 2 combos in a row. So I'm going to do a couple Lightning Bolts here. Now I do have the 4-piece in this clip, so your generation won't be quite this big. But a couple more Lightning Bolts, like I said. I'm going to go ahead and use my Stormkeeper, get that on cooldown. Now I'm going to be doing the other half of the combo of Elemental Blast into the Lightning Bolt. I do use my Storm Elemental there, so ignore that. Into that Lightning Bolt. And now I'm going to do the combo again. So Frost Shock. Right there. Into a Lava Burst. Into an Elemental Blast. And then once again, another Lightning Bolt. So that is the full combo. And then as you can see here, I'm going to do that same combo again. Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and then Lightning Bolt once I stop moving. So that will be the way that you open with the 2-piece. So again, we want to, for that very first Lightning Bolt, we want to just get the Frost Shock and the Lava Burst onto that Lightning Bolt. And then from there, we're going to be treating pretty much everything else the exact same as we would in any other build. So with that being said, we'll move on and we'll kind of talk about the 4-piece for a little bit too. All right, moving on to the 4-piece. Now, I don't have any PTR footage of this, unfortunately. We didn't have too much time to actually have the nerfed versions of the 2 and 4-piece, so that happened after all the raid testing was over, and I didn't take some time to actually record it. So we're going to be doing this on live, but I will still be going through the steps, so you can just use your imagination on how it will actually work once you get that 4-piece, but I can still do it even without the 4-piece, just to show you how that would work. So there is some debate on doing this version of the opening versus what we do with the 2-piece as to which one is actually better. This version gets your Stormkeeper, your actual ability Stormkeeper on cooldown about 20 seconds, sometimes 25 seconds ahead of when you would be doing it without doing this pull. So that's one benefit to it. The downside of it is it leaves you in a position where you might have to use all of your Frost Shocks right in the opening if you have bad luck with overload. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but getting Stormkeeper on cooldown 20 to 25 seconds sooner is probably going to be a net benefit in the long run, but not 100% sure. There's, like I said, there's some debate on that right now, but I'll still show you how this will work. Another thing you have to understand is when you actually use the ability Stormkeeper, it blocks the 2-piece from proccing. So as long as you have 2 charges or even 1 charge of Stormkeeper from the button press, actually pressing the button Stormkeeper, your 2-piece will not actually proc. It'll just do a 5-second loop waiting for you to use those 2 charges of Stormkeeper. So that's how this build, or how this version of the pull will work. So what we're going to do is about 7 seconds before the pull, maybe 8, depending on your haste, if you're lusting or not. You can go ahead and use your Stormkeeper. 3 seconds before the pull, use your Storm Elemental into your Ice Fury, into your Flame Shock. You're going to go ahead and do a Frost Shock. Go ahead and use that Lava Burst into the first Lightning Bolt, which is basically the exact same as you would do with the 2-piece, except this is actually our Stormkeeper that we have the actual ability instead of that 2-piece proccing. Right now, if I had the 2-piece, it would just be doing a 5-second loop because I still have this Stormkeeper preventing it from proccing. So the 2-piece would just be waiting. Now I'm going to do one more Frost Shock to get enough Maelstrom to be able to cast Elemental Blast. Now I'm going to use Elemental Blast into that second Lightning Bolt, and now it's no longer blocking the 2-piece. And in the worst case scenario, what you can do is, if it immediately procs, is now we're just going to cast these 2 Frost Shocks. At the very worst, we'll have to cast these 2 Frost Shocks. Frost Shock 1, Frost Shock 2, and then Lava Burst, and then Elemental Blast, and then that would be where the 2-piece Lightning Bolt would be cast right there. So I can actually do the full opener even without the 2-piece, even without the 4-piece. I'm able to kind of show you how that works. And at the very worst, you do have to use all of your Frost Shocks. Keep in mind that after that second Stormkeeper cast of Lightning Bolt, then our 4-piece is actually kicking in, so you'll be getting more Maelstrom. There's a chance that you only have to use 1 additional Frost Shock. In some cases, in like best case scenario, you only have to use 2 Frost Shocks. But worst case, you have to use all 4, and in which case, you're not getting the coverage of your Electrified Shocks for the next, like, as you can see here, for the next like 14 seconds or so. You won't be able to get that back, and I've only got 4 seconds left on this, and that was without Lust. It would be even faster, so you'd actually have even less time coverage with Electrified Shocks. So that's where that debate comes from. When it was back when the 4-piece was 75 Maelstrom, or 75% more Maelstrom, it was a no-brainer to do it this way. But with 50, it's still a little bit of a debate. But that's how this opener will look with the 4-piece. Again, if you would prefer to just stick with the 2-piece, it probably won't be that much of a difference. But this will allow, like I said, be able to get the actual Stormkeeper ability on cooldown about 20 to 20 seconds faster. So that's how that works. Alright, so let's talk about using our Stormkeeper as well as the 2-piece proc in the middle of combat, not just on the pull here. So basically around 6 to 7 seconds, you want to think about pooling that Maelstrom. So you see here, I've got my Stormkeeper coming off cooldown in 4 seconds. So I'm going to start pooling some of that Maelstrom. I have Frost Shock charges. So here I'm going to go ahead and use a Frost Shock, go ahead and use my Lava Burst, go ahead and use my Elemental Blast, and then boom, Stormkeeper is now off cooldown. So the second that it came off cooldown, I was ready to go ahead and start casting it again. And I already had used that Elemental Blast, so I've got that Surge of Power proc. So I'm going to go ahead and use that Lightning Bolt, and now I'm already set up to do another combo. So Frost Shock, Lava Burst, and then when I stop moving here, I'll go ahead and get my Elemental Blast off, and then a Lightning Bolt. And then I can just go right back into the rest of my rotation. And then from here, as you can see, I've got my weak aura over here, and that will be in the description down below. I'm going to be looking at this and tracking this weak aura so I know when my 2-piece is going to proc, and I'll do the same thing around like 6 to 7 seconds. That's when I want to start pooling. So like right now, it's 3 seconds until it comes up. I'm going to go ahead and start pooling some of that Maelstrom, get one more sneaky Lightning Bolt out right before it procs, and you can see here it's procking. I'm going to go ahead and follow that up with a Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and then again Lightning Bolt. And it's going to be very important to be doing this constantly in combat. You want to make sure that every single Stormkeeper Lightning Bolt is getting that Surge of Power buff. That's a huge DPS increase to make sure that you're doing that. So constantly be watching when your Stormkeeper, not only the ability, but then also your 2-piece is going to proc, so you can go ahead and pool Maelstrom so that you're already ready to go. As soon as that procs, you've either already done the Frost Shock and Lava Burst and Elemental Blast, or you have that ready to go. Either one of those things, make sure it's ready to fit directly into your rotation so you're not having to like catch up really quickly with Maelstrom, or that you're having to accidentally just send the lightning bolt out without it being buffed by Surge of Power. That's one thing you really want to try to avoid. It's a lot easier with the Stormkeeper ability because you can always hold that for whenever you want to actually use it, but for the 2-piece, you are dictated by a timer, so you really have to play around that timer to make sure that you have the Maelstrom ready to go when that proc happens. So all you have to do is get that elemental blast out and then buff that lightning bolt with Surge of Power. So really, really important thing to do. Make sure you're also paying attention to those timers. All right, so now we're going to talk about what I think are the absolute essentials for this build. So the number one thing, the absolute number one thing to do as you're getting better with this build and practicing this build will be to nail the combo. It's the empowered Frost Shocks from that Ice Fury. You want to be using a Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Bolt. If you can do that, if you can nail that combo, you're 80% of the way there. Really start to ingrain that into your head. That is how you're going to be doing every single spending window with Elemental Blast. Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. You can do that 80% of the way there. Now, as you get better, you're going to start realizing that you don't actually have to do it specifically in that order with that Frost Shock. The only thing that we really need to be covering with that Frost Shock is we want to make sure the Electrified Shock's debuff is going to cover the amount of time it takes for you to cast Elemental Blast, and it's following Lightning Bolt. That's the only thing that we really need to have happening with Electrified Shocks. However, we don't want to be thinking about variables and all that stuff when we're learning this build. We want to be focusing on the easiest way we can to play this so we can actually start to get better and feel that progress. So the first thing that I would highly suggest you do is locking down the combo: Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. If you can get that down, like I said, you'll be most of the way there. The next thing that I would say is to focus on is make sure you're not overcapping your resources. Make sure that you're not getting too much Maelstrom not too quickly, but make sure you're actually spending it. Don't just sit on a whole bunch of Maelstrom. Make sure you're always thinking about how the next period of time that you can then do that combo so that you can spend that Maelstrom. Make sure you're not just like sitting at 150, because every bit of Maelstrom that we are not able to have, like we just overcap, that's potentially one less Elemental Blast, potentially one less Surge of Power Lightning Bolt that we're not able to get off. So make sure you're not overcapping. Make sure you get that Flame Shock up, but honestly, we're like, as far as importance go, now we're like, these are like minor important. Make sure you have your Flame Shock up, but if it falls off and you're in the middle of something else, don't worry about it too much. But just whenever you get a free cast, use your Flame Shock. Make sure it stays on the target as much as you can. It's actually something that I'm actually struggling with sometimes, is just finding time to actually cast Flame Shock. But if you can do that, just make sure that's just one easy thing you can do. If you see it fall off, when you get that free cast outside of the combo, get that Flame Shock back up. And then finally, and I am putting this at the bottom, even though it is definitely more important than Flame Shock, I am going to put this at the bottom just from a learning perspective. Don't worry about covering with Electrified Shocks. Like, don't worry about trying to maximize your Electrified Shock debuff on the boss while you're learning. I find that to be the number one reason why people hate this build, is they feel like they have to have the Electrified Shocks debuff basically up at all times. And while that is actually definitely true, you want to have it up as much as possible, when you're learning, just don't worry about it so much. The number one thing you should be worried about is just nailing the combo, and then whatever happens with those Frost Shocks. But as you get better, really, you should start to care more about that. But again, from a learning perspective, don't worry about that. Don't worry about having to stare at the Electrified Shock debuff and having to maximize it. Just don't worry about it right now. As you get better, that's something that you can add on. But as you're learning and you're still trying to get better, just kind of have that in the back of your mind, but not as a focus. All right, so that's pretty much it, what I consider the essentials for this build. Work on those things in that order, and you will see the results right away. But the number one thing is getting that combo down so that you're nailing your spending window. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about how the whole build works in a practical sense. We'll go back to that Heroic Kazara, and we'll talk about actually playing through it. All right, so here we are with Heroic Kazara again, and this time I won't talk through the opener, so if you're confused about that, feel free to go back to that portion of the video. But again, the main thing I'm going to be focusing on here is going to be that Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt combo, and just keeping it as simple as possible. And that's going to be the number one thing I do here, is just going to be building Maelstrom and spending it that way. So right here, I use my Frost Shock, my last Frost Shock, and I'm going to be without Ice Fury for the next 8 to 10 seconds here. So all I'm going to be doing is building with Lightning Bolt, and then when I have enough to cast Elemental Blast, I'll just use Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Bolt. Here I have my Ice Fury coming off cooldown, and as you can see here, I'll just back it up real quick. When I get this mechanic on me, I'm going to go ahead and use my Spirit Walker's Grace so it doesn't interrupt my casting. And now I can just treat this as normal. And now I have Ice Fury coming off cooldown, so the mechanic is done. And now I can do Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Bolt. The same thing that we're trying to do every single time. Get my Flame Shock back up there, go back and do another combo, dodge this mechanic, Lightning Bolt, one more Lightning Bolt, and then Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, and Lightning Bolt again. Get a couple bit more just to kind of build some Maelstrom, and then I get another mechanic on me. And I would probably have gotten maybe one or two more Lightning Bolt casts here, but because I need to move, let's go ahead and move. It won't mess up anything because I have that Frost Shock and I have that Lava Burst. I am literally ready right away to go into that combo. So here I'm going to use that Frost Shock while moving, use that Lava Burst while moving, use that Elemental Blast, get out of that mechanic, Lightning Bolt, and then go about my day. Go right back into just building Maelstrom. Get that Ice Fury that came back off again, get it on cooldown immediately. And what do you think I'm going to do here? That's right, use my Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast. And then here, as you can see, Stormkeeper had come off cooldown during that period of time. So now, even though I finished that Elemental Blast, Surge of Power is just standing there. It's just waiting. So now we can have our Elemental Blast hitting the target to apply us with Lightning Rod, and we have that Electrified Shock still on there. So we use that Stormkeeper and immediately into that first Lightning Bolt. Both debuffs plus Surge of Power works out fine there. And now I can go ahead and do that same thing with the other Lava Burst, back into another Elemental Blast, and then the other Lightning Bolt there. Should have gotten Flame Shock back up on the target instead. I had time to get that, but I kind of delayed it a little bit. But again, not the end of the world. I made a little mistake, but it's not going to cost me too much damage in that respect. And now I can just go right back into focusing on Kazara. And that's pretty much all I'm going to be doing for the entirety of the rest of the fight. Building that Maelstrom, Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. Here again, don't have Ice Fury for a couple seconds, so I'm just going to chill, get those Lightning Bolt casts, reapply my Flame Shock, now get that Ice Fury back on cooldown the second it came up, right into a Frost Shock. What do you think is coming next? Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. And I will do that every single time for the rest of the boss. So as we get here, we'll just go ahead and skip to the end because that's pretty much it. Nothing else really to talk about. That's basically the whole fight right there. So you just get more of those puddles throughout the fight. But as from a DPS perspective on this fight, as well as just like how to play this build, I think I've covered it, right? What's the number one thing I've said 1,000 times in this video? Frost Shock, Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Lightning Bolt. If you can nail that down, you'll be getting the like 80 to 90% of the build down. If you can just focus on those things. Don't try to overcomplicate it by focusing on the empowered Frost Shocks. Don't worry about that too much. As long as you're doing that combo, it will take care of itself for the most part. You might run into those situations where you've used all of your Frost Shocks and you're waiting for Ice Fury to come back on cooldown. That's okay. Then you're just building with Lightning Bolt and then spending on the Lava Burst into the Elemental Blast into the Lightning Bolt. But for the most part, follow the combo and you will be totally fine. That's the simplest way I can put it to keep this making sense. I really don't think it's that difficult of a build once you get used to it. And there's so much room for improvement once you feel like you've gotten comfortable with it. then you can start trying to improve on your electrified shock up timing. Then you can work on, finding a good place to actually put flame shock, optimizing your movement, which is obviously a huge part of any kind of build, and doing the most damage as you possibly can. But all those things coming together, I feel like at a base level, this is actually really not that difficult of a build. So practice those essentials, practice that combo. If you can get that down, you'll be most of the way there. So that's pretty much it, guys. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If it helped you in any way, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. I stream at twitch.tv/Ridmark, so feel free to give me a follow there. I do keys, and I will probably start streaming my raids soon as well. I haven't fully decided that, but we'll figure that out. But that's pretty much it, guys. Again, hope you liked the video, and other than that, I will see you next time.